Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of the drawstring bag inspired by Susanna from Vintage Blend Studio. So I'm hoping today in the second part of this video I finish the project. Now it's been a week or so since you've seen part 1 and the plan was to stitch this down, and I decided to do running stitch in alternating directions, really depending on the fabric that I came across. So if this was this way and then I hit the blue, I went down, and this one I went up. So you can sort of see I let the fabric tell me where to stitch, and I love it. Now the plan was to then lay lace over it and weave some lace, but I've decided not to. I just love it the way it is. I'm not going to do anything else to the front. I'm not going to embellish it anymore. I'm not going to lay anything on it. I just want to keep it a simple Boro inspired piece. So that's where we're at. Now I've taken this panel, which is slightly bigger than Susanna's panel that she talks about on her channel, because I had these jelly roll strips to work with. So just by not trimming them, I've gone a little bit past her measurements. So it really is just depending on what you're using is how your bag will go. But if you follow the simple principles, it's pretty straightforward. Now, before I sat down at the camera, I hopped on the fabric and the sewing machine. Hopped on the fabric, for goodness sakes. So my lining is what I'm trying to say. Let me just get myself organised here. So if anyone's wanting to know, Hyde Park by Blackbirds is the name of the fabric I've chosen for the lining. I think it just works beautifully. Complements, looks like it's meant to be, but they are different packs of fabric. Remember, this was Atelier. I think it's a Moda. Or Three Sisters. It's probably printed by Moda, but Three Sisters Atelier. And this is Blackbird Hyde Park. Okay, so I laid my stitch piece. Let me come up a little bit in the camera. I laid my stitched piece, the big rectangle, on top of my backing fabric I chose and cut around. So I've got 2 huge rectangles now. Then I went to my sewing machine and I have joined right sides together the lining like so. I was going to hand stitch it. I did discuss this with a few comments on the previous videos. Was I going to hand stitch or sew? But look, I've decided to get the sewing machine out. I just feel it's going to make it nice and strong for me, especially when it comes to the gathering, the next bit. So that is the side seam of the lining. So now when you look in, it's a circle for those who are new to all of this. And we're going to attach the base to this piece. Now this one I haven't yet joined. So when I pause the video, I'm going to hop off and I'm going to join that to there. So it too will be a circle waiting for the base to come in. Now let's talk about the base. Susanna technically doesn't have a pattern that's available for this whole project, but if you bought the fabrics, you would have got this with the piece. You don't need a pattern. As we've been taking you along, we've been telling you all the measurements. It's a big rectangle by 2 attached to a circle. So this circle I've just cut out. Now I've allowed a little extra. So I've got like a 1/4 inch seam. Now if we were to measure across the diameter, it's about 4.5 inches. But you can adjust this to whatever you want. Susanna's pattern is 4 inches, so I've got a little bit extra there. I think it'll go in good stead because I noticed that it was quite a tight amount of fabric. Well, what am I trying to say? It was a tight little circle to bring that huge rectangle into. Now you put a gathering stitch around your rectangle and you cinch it all in, and then with right sides together you attach this to the internals of your rectangle once it's all gathered in. So we'll get to that. But before we do, I've got a little bit more stitching to do. This was a piece used if you wanted to thicken your base with a little bit of cardboard, but I'm not going to worry about that because I plan to do a little bit of stitching. And when I cut my rectangle out of this fabric, you'll see I've got a funny little corner here. So the plan is, that's where my rectangle came out. So I'm just going to cut that, and that piece of fabric then can be put away because it's a decent size. And the what am I trying to say? This scrappy bit that sort of was left, see, now I can pop that away in my cupboard, and this will become a scrap that I might nibble away at in the future. Who knows? The plan is to have that on the base, so this little guy will join into that, and then I'll cut a second one out for the internal lining to have its very own base. So that's the plan. So I'm just going to do that first. I'll do a rough cut. This one I wanted to be exactly where it is because I want this fabric to be positioned like that. The other one, I'm not too worried, so I might, to be efficient, I might just pop it there. And I'll bring it over here. There's a fold there that I'll be struggling with. So I'm getting my second circle is what I'm attempting to do here. And then I'm going to grab some wadding. Let's just cut this out. I might even go a fraction bigger again. I just don't want it to be too much of a struggle to join the sides to the base. There's a lot of fabric to cinch in. And the other thing is mine's got quite rigid. Mind you, I did hang on to Susanna's bag and it was too. There's a lot of work that goes into the embellishing. So I'm just going to make my circle a little bit bigger. Doesn't need to be a struggle. It's not even really a circle here. We're getting a bit crooked. But it's all good. Now, the plan is to make one of these padded. Need a little bit of felt or something. Just having a look in my scrap bucket. I don't know if I've got any felt. I might have to go to my big piece I bought at Spotlight a week or so ago. This guy. I'm sure there was a funny corner where I could nibble in. Yep, there we go. So that's the product, if you're wondering, made in America. Pretty pleased with it actually. So Tia put me onto it. Had a little visit of Tia in the workplace and I said I was here to pick up some felt, my usual go-to, and it felt nasty. I don't know what was going on with it. Felt really horrible in my hands, and she said, look, come and have a look at this. This is what she'd been using lately. And I thought, give it a go. So this is purely to give it a little bit of padding. So I guess back in the day when Susanna first made the bag, she used cardboard, but she's eliminated cardboard from the project. Actually, her panel she used in another project. So isn't it the way you start off with something and then you go, oh, I'm going to do this instead. So that was quite funny, made me giggle. It's like, how often does that happen? Alrighty, let's just invisible stitch this down. I don't think I'll do both. I don't think I'll need to. So I'm just going to whip around. So I will pause the video. I'm going to running stitch across this piece so that it looks like the side of the bag. Shouldn't take me too long. And the piece with the wadding is going on the bottom of the outside of the bag. This little guy, I'm going to leave him fairly lightweight because I don't want it to be real chunky on the inside. There's enough bulk happening on the outside without me adding, you know, more bulk. I will also hop on my sewing machine and stitch the side seam of my outside rectangle. I'll call them rectangles so you know the sides of the bag. So it shouldn't take too long to finish this project. Once you're sort of, I guess where all the time is how much decorating you're going to do to the actual panel itself. If you're just going to use a running stitch, great, but if you're then going to come back through and add lace and trims and yo-yos and buttons, and my goodness, you could be at it for ages. Now, just for speed and straightness, I'm going to actually rule some lines just ever so lightly. Just wondering which one I like the best. No, just stay focused, girl. And what I might do is at some point we need to know the center of this for when we match it to the side seam. So let's use that as our first line of stitch. Now this is a really good way if you're wanting to ensure that your lines are fairly straight. You can mark them up. You've got a couple options. You could just use a pencil. If it's going to be washed, the pencil will eventually wear out. Water-soluble pens, heat-soluble pens, heaps and heaps of options. So I just want to make sure that I have reasonably straight lines. It shouldn't take long to stitch this. And you know, it will shrink in a little bit too due to being stitched, so it won't hurt to have that extra little rough cut. And look, it's rough. I didn't really measure. You know how it is. Fabric's very forgiving. Alrighty, so as simple as that. This will give me the quilted look on the bottom of the bag. You don't have to do this. You might have a lace piece on the bottom of your bag. And like I said, the inside lining will have the same technique applied. And I'm not quilting it. I'm not quilting the lining. I'm not quilting the base piece, this guy, because it'll just get too thick. I want to be able to put things in it and not have it absolutely bulging with fabrics and embroidery and things before I've even put anything into the little bag. So that's the plan. I'll just get to the end of this row, then I will pause the video, and like I said, I'll go to my sewing machine and stitch the second rectangle. So hard to stop once you get going. Alrighty. I've been thinking about it's probably a step I'm a bit too soon on. I'm thinking about the tunnel you create for the cord to go through. And I'm just wondering if I can add a piece of fabric, because I'd like my bag to be a little bit taller. And I suppose Susanna just put the lining inside the outside component right sides together and stitch the top seam together, I think, and then stitched a tunnel. I'm thinking about making a tunnel on the outside. Look, let me show you. And I'll probably, oh, those dogs. Noisy cretins. Gee, that's crooked. All right, just stop rushing. I've even got lines and I still can't get it straight. I'm going to leave that for now. And that I just need to keep in a safe place. Yeah, so if I'm going to have a tunnel to put my cordage in, do I do it now? No, I still need to do the side seams. Let's assume that the lining is now attached and it's in here, and you're putting the stitching on for the tunnel and the cord to go through. I did have a thought, which I'm still thinking about, is cutting a strip of fabric and creating a tunnel, like a bias binding tunnel on the outside of the bag for it to go through. But I don't know if I will do that, you know. Listen to those dogs, bloomin' mutts. I'm still thinking about that. I might end up doing what Susanna did and just do a tunnel, and yeah. Anyway, it's a decision for later. In the meantime, I shall go and join this, and I shall stitch that, and then we're pretty much ready to start construction. So I'll be back in a moment. Okay, I'm back. So I haven't yet finished stitching him. After I finished filming, I hopped up to my sewing machine and joined the side seams as I said I would. By doing that, there's a seam there. And I also put a running stitch right around the base of this guy, the lining, and also the outside panel, because I just couldn't wait. So what I want to do now is mark the quarters. Now you'll see why in a moment, just to make my life simple. First of all, let's find the half. Now you can mark it. I'm just giving Pepper the evil eye. There's dogs barking in the streets and Pepper's looking like, so you could mark it, you could put a pin. Pepper, don't even think about it. I might even just do a little nick and then put that mark onto your side seam, because we're finding the quarter and the quarter. Little nick. Neighbourhood dogs are absolutely going off. It's late afternoon and there's a few people returning from the weekend, and I would say there's doggies that have got outside the gates of properties and they're all goosing on the footpath with kids, and my pair of mutts are thinking, well, that's something they'd want to be involved in. So I'm going to do the same to this little, gosh, it's hard to imagine that we're going to get this tiny little circle into that big rectangle. It is a struggle. It's not the easiest of things to do. So don't stress if you're thinking, oh my goodness, how's this going to come together? If you get your notches in the right spot, it'll certainly go a long way to assist. So now, because I've used a big stitch, I've increased the length of my stitch. I can grab those two threads. I might use the outside ones because that little circle will be in there and this will be all gathered up to it. So just take your time, gently ease it. Get it to roughly the size you think it is. It's not too bad. If you think you're there, just sort of even it up a little bit. Don't knot this. You were tempted to, I know, but don't do it. Now, right sides together, you can put one of the little notches on that side seam and pop a pin in. You can fiddle with the pins before you go to your sewing machine, or if you're hand sewing it. This is just to give you a bit of an idea of the distance needing still to be travelled. There's a little notch and there's a little notch. We'll see how close we are. Try and stay away from the gathering stitch. Where's the next notch? There. And the next one is where? I know you're here. There it is. Okay. And when you're comfortable that all seams are matching, and this little guy, where are you? It's becoming ungathered as I muck around with it, but that's okay. There it is. We can fiddle with it. It is fiddly. It's probably why I don't make a lot of bags, and I'm always looking for easy bags to make, especially if the raw seams are showing, because I love the look. Plus it takes a little bit of pressure off this. It is doable, but it's fiddly. And because I didn't pin the gathered part, or the gathered stitch, the gathering stitch, I should be able to just ease it. Yep. So I might go back over to the opposite side and just see between pin to pin, which is there and there, how we're looking. Oh, not too bad. Can I pin it in the middle of the quarter? And I think I can. Yep. So that's the far side. Let's ease our way back to that side seam. And I think I'm starting to feel like I can recognise how tight it needs to be by what I've pinned so far. It's got to be quite cinched in, but it's not too tight. Like, it's fiddly, isn't it? If you don't like fiddly things, this project's probably not for you, and you're probably throwing it across the room, but just bear with it. Where's my gathering stitch gone? Come here, you. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And I'll go around this a couple times, just making sure that everything's sitting right, so then I can whiz around that, goodness me, getting camera, whiz around that edge there under my sewing machine, knowing that this is all going to be sitting nicely. If it means more pins, so be it. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do. See, that feels like it's really good. Trying to keep my top seams right. Look at all the threads, for goodness sakes. Back in the day I would have edged that just to make it less fraying. Gosh, amazing how much technique we've dropped in the pursuit of relaxed sewing. Oh gee. Let's sometimes you just got to go old school and make sure everything's sitting right. Now I'm pretty confident that that's pretty good, to be honest. Even over there where I don't have a pin yet, I'm thinking it is pretty good because it looks very similar. The next panel is going to be trickier because it's embellished. It's 2 layers of fabric plus a lot of stitching. So there's potential for a bit more wriggling and, you know, getting it to sit right. More pins the better. If it means it doesn't go anywhere on you, just do it. Take your time. If you want to run a tacking stitch around or hand stitch it, if sewing machines seem a bit full on, and they can be, you know, you get speed up, you're going around a circle, what could possibly go wrong? Everything. So this would be fine to hand stitch, and I would do a back stitch so that you're coming back on yourself, locking it in. Lots of pins. Why not, I say. I might hand stitch it, you know. And I can take my time and make sure it's right, because nothing worse. I'm actually going to knot that now. I don't think I need to gather any more. I'm going to put a final pin in there. So I feel like that's sitting really well. And then just do a rough knot. It'll be reinforced with stitching anyway, but at least that's going to stop it from breaking back out on me. I'm pretty confident that's pretty good. So if we were to look inside, there's our little base, and once that's all stitched down, that'll sit nicely. Then I'd probably press it. You don't have to, but I probably would. And if I was going to hand sew it, I would just use some crochet cotton. Take your time, make sure that's all sitting nice, and just do a little back stitch through there just to hold it all. I won't use that cotton because I don't have much of it. Looks like I'm doing it by hand. And I would probably start on the opposite side. No, I will start on that side seam. And it'll just be a case of just look forward a little bit, make sure it's nice and flat, and just come below your gathering stitch, because you want that hidden in the seam. You don't want to be stitching on the top side of your gathering stitch. Back in the day when they didn't have sewing machines, this is how it would have gone. So at least by doing it by hand, like I said, you can manipulate it. Where's my needle gone? Just do a back stitch as you go. Stitch forward, stitch back, just to lock it all into position. All right, well, I'm going to toddle off. I still haven't made a decision what I'm doing with the cordage, or the, sorry, not the cordage, the tunnel of which it goes through. Susanna's way is through the, just stitching a tube, you know, stitching it so that the cordage has something to go through. I had thought about creating a tunnel with a decorative fabric for the cordage to go through. So I haven't ruled that out yet. guess it's all about what complements the piece is probably what's going through my head, but I could be over engineering too. All right guys, I'm going to pause the video. I've got some homework to do. I'm going to insert this, stitch it, do the same for this guy once I've stitched that, and then I'll have the two pieces so that they'll sit within each other and I can then do the top seam. So what I mean by that, let's assume that this is completed and this is completed. Then it's going to be a case of putting them inside each other and then stitching that top edge and then turn it the right way so that you can, you know, have right sides together, if that makes sense. All right, I'm going to leave you be now and I will be back when I get a little bit more stitching done. Won't be long. Hi everyone, I'm back. Okay, I've been coming and going from the project all day due to lots of things happening. So I finally feel like I've got back to it. The patch that goes into the bottom of the decorated rectangle, I ended up just doing an overstitch. It is so bulky because I've layered and stitched and woven, and you know, I know Susanna's was a lot more lightweight, her a piece. So because mine's thick, I thought there's no way a sewing machine is going to get through that without breaking its thread. And it just seemed the easiest way to attach the base, and it was really simple. The other thing is I use the sewing machine to put that gathering stitch around the bottom edge of that rectangle. It broke the moment I started gathering, so it just was not strong enough. So I ended up getting some crochet cotton and doing a brand new gathering stitch, and that gave me the strength to cinch it all in and then pin like I did the lining, this little guy, and then just do an overcast stitch. So that's where I'm at with that. Now I have also put right sides together. I mentioned it a few seconds ago. Right sides together and stitched right around the perimeter of the bag. Now you've got two ways of approaching the turning out of the bag. You could leave a gap and then turn your bag right way and then just slip stitch your gap closed, which is what I was going to do, but then I thought, oh, it's right at the top edge of the bag, and I seem to recall that Susanna had left a gap down here in the lining, and I thought that is so much better because no one's going to see it down there. Now the only thing is I don't think I've got a quick unpick here with me, so I'm going to have to just pretend we're out camping and we've decided to make a bag and we hardly have any tools. I'm just going to use this little pair of scissors to ease open that spine or that seam. Where's my pin cushion gone? Gosh, I've got everything everywhere here. I much prefer hand sewing because you can keep your mess to just here, but the moment you bring out a sewing machine, you're jumping up and down and going all over the place. It just becomes complicated. So what I'm going to do is just unpick enough that I can get my fingers in there and grab it and turn it right side out. So right sides together. Bring the top seams together and stitch it around. You can do it by hand or on your sewing machine. I did it on the sewing machine. It's a bit of everything on this piece. You could so do this by hand, this bag. I think I'm still thinking towards the way of a tunnel to thread that sits on the exterior. Might make a bias binding type scenario. Stitch it to the exterior. I'll have a think about it when I turn this bag right. The reason why is I've gone to the trouble of all this hand sewing and I really don't want to see sewing machine stitching unless it's absolutely necessary. So I thought, well, one way around it was to create a strip of fabric that brings the tunnel into use for a cord to go through, or ribbon, whatever you're planning on using. So I'd like to explore that. Don't know if I'll get it done tonight, mind you. This is going to be a video over a few days, I think. We'll see how we go. Should really go and cook some dinner. I'm just trying to bring through the thread from the other side. Bit of a sneaky move. If I can get him, oh, of course I can't get him through because he's still attached. I was wondering, why is that not? Give it a little tug. There she is. And now I'm going to knot that. It'll just stop it from going any further than what I want it. That'll be really easy to slip stitch close. Have I got enough space for my big mitt to get in there? Probably not. So let's just pull this seam back. Another thing is, I've been thinking about the cordage. I've got cord that I can use, but I had thought about re-watching Jennifer Clouston's video, and also K3N. They both have made a version of cord made out of fabrics. So I was thinking about actually going and watch that over the next few days and maybe making something along those lines, because it's got a bit of a rustic feel about it with all this stitching, and I thought that might look really neat. That's barely a knot, but anyway. Let's turn this right side. That should be just enough to ease it through. Don't force it. Just give yourself. Here she comes. Hello, little lady. There we go. I know that Susanna, when she started doing the cordage, she just broke the seam again to gain access, reinforced it and slid a cord through. I'll show you what I mean in a moment. Got dangly bits everywhere. It's bound to happen. Frayed bits. So we're through, turned the right way. Let me zoom up a little bit. I feel like I'm right up in your face there. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to sit and snip bits. I'd zigzagged around that edge like my sewing training would tell me to do. I wouldn't have so many little ratty bits sticking through, but it's all good. All right, in there you go, in you go. Beautiful. There we go. We now have one line bag, and what I can do tonight is just slip stitch this little guy together. Much better than up on that top edge. I'm pretty sure that's how Susanna did it. So like I said, I haven't watched the video for a little bit and I'm just winging it. But there's so many variations to these things, you know. Explore, have a play, don't be shy. There we go. Just finger pressing that a little bit, but that will just be a little hidden hem stitch go through there. Yeah, beautiful. All right, so the next thing is to think about the tunnel. Now, it'll need a bit of a press because it's forcing itself against me here. So you could top stitch that as well if you wanted, like an invisible stitch. You could do a few things. I've got no pins with me. They're all in the next room. So let's assume that's sitting well. So I've got little straggly bits everywhere. I could it's woven fabric. Things are going to inevitably get messy with threads. So Susanna's tunnel, ow, pin. Let's assume that's looking nice and sitting flush. Susanna's tunnel was here. 2 rows, about not quite the width of that ruler. 1 line of stitching at the top edge of the ruler and a line of stitching at the bottom edge of the ruler, which then gave her a nice little gathered top because this is sort of out in the air. So that's one option. Another option which I'm thinking of doing is we get a strip of fabric. Where's the box of strips? But I just don't know if it's the right look for the piece. Let's just have a play. It's probably not long enough, but where's the iron? Let's turn the iron on, guys. Okay, so what I thought, I guess the question is, will it be strong enough to handle a cord being tightened? Might not. That's where the old sewing machine really comes in, doesn't it? I guess another option is you could put the drawstring right at the very top. I like how it's got that gathered top to the bag by having your carriage for your cordage a little bit lower. So what my theory is creating this tunnel for it to slide down. I don't know if this will work. Might just do it the way Susanna did it. I'm concerned that, so I'm pretty much creating a binding, a bias binding. Well, it's not cut on the bias. Let's pretend that it's a bias binding. By folding it with the iron, at least I can get a feel for its shape. And if that's the way we want to go, okay, so we would then find the side seam, which is somewhere. Where's the side seam? Doesn't really matter for purposes of demonstration, but in the same region as Susanna's sides, her seams, is we slip stitch or top stitch. Actually, I might top stitch it because then it will catch the lining. I'm just pinching pins here. So let's assume that that's all nicely ironed. The back is sitting right, as in the lining, because I've ironed everything. We've created a tunnel that will go around the entire bag, like so. And then where the two meet here, I'll probably do a nice little turned in edge so it's nice and tidy, like so. Bring them to the same location, which will be a side seam, the side seam, because there's only one side seam. I'll iron this too so it sits properly for me, like so. So yeah, I wonder, you know what I might do? Like, here we go, we're going to reinvent the wheel again, is instead of mucking around with it like that, why don't I just, like this, that is fun, you know, if you want to over-engineer it. But let's just create a tube. So, right sides together, sewing machine that there, so at least that's nice and tight. Turn it inside out, so now we've got a machine stitched tunnel, like so. Yep, okay, now this is better. We've got a machine stitched tunnel of fabric. Now we top stitch this onto the bag and then slide our cordage through. I think that's the better way to go. And if there was like running stitch along that edge and running stitch along that edge, that would look like it's been handmade, but we know that, you know, there's a seam in there. I'm thinking along those lines. All right, well, enough for tonight. I will pause the video and come back and show you what ended up happening. But that's what I'm thinking of doing, and that way I can use one of these strips, just find one that's a bit longer, create a tunnel, pin it on, making sure that my lining is sitting nice and flat, and then, yeah, stitch it on. Could even use the sewing machine, like, does it really matter? At least it'd be strong. Maybe I do. Who knows? All right, guys, like I said, it's getting late in the evening. I'll leave it at that. Have a little think about it, and I'll come back to you in a moment with what I ended up doing. Okay, I'm back. So with much deliberation, I decided to go down the track of ironing a fold in top and bottom of one of the jelly roll strips. Now the strip is just about the right size to do the task, which is great. The strip gets cut in half, and that's the bit remaining from once I pinned it onto the side of the bag. And I'll show you what I mean in a moment with this strip. And I've also decided that I'm going to use my sewing machine to attach it. I think this structure, this tunnel, needs strength. Can you imagine the rope cinching in and out there? I just am a little concerned that my hand stitching would hold it. There might be an opportunity to do a decorative stitch over the top of the sewing machine stitch. But yeah, upon reflection, I think I need to stitch it. I'm also doing a bit of a turn down at the end because it'll make it nice and neat where the two sides meet with this little tunnel, we'll call it. So it's taken a bit to think about, and it's been great. I love it when there's not officially a pattern and we have to invent as we go. It's really cool. Makes you think, doesn't it? I'm sure there's heaps of other ways that, you know, this could be done, but that's it pinned on. Nice and neat, and I'll run my sewing machine starting there, top and bottom. So that means that this side, because there's two cords, have I ironed it the right size? Not quite. Just need to fold that in. I thought it was a little bit shy, but that's okay. So let's assume that that is there, leaving just a tiniest little gap for the cord to go through. I was thinking too, as I was doing it, I picked up some beautiful ribbons, velvet ribbons, when I was at Ballarat with Susanna at, gosh, I've gone blank. Concentrating here. Gail's Patchwork Emporium, but they're not with me. I just don't know if there's a colour that actually suits. I'm just going by eye, but if you did want to know, about an inch is the top. Now remembering that you're trying to catch the back lining, as well as just had some ice cream, and my throat now just feels a bit catchy. And I think I am literally going to run my stitch right over that, just straight through. I might go backwards and forwards a little bit there, because if there's a pressure point on this bag, that's where it'll be. I even thought that this could even have tabs like our, like the Japanese rice bags. That would work too. You'd have to insert them before you did that seam. Did cross my mind to actually unpick that and redo it with some tabs. And I thought, no, we've got a challenge. Let's nut it out. Lots of pins. Now, I'm just going to make sure too, before I go and stitch all this down, that I don't have any pins in the tunnel. See, there's one. Oh, imagine how hard that'll be to get out. So double check that. I can feel one under my fingers there. So one will be checking before she proceeds. Yeah, I think because the cords, you use 2 cords and then cinch it together, that's a lot of pressure on the tunnel. So I think, look, if you want to make it easy on yourself, just sew a tunnel like Susanna did. But if you want another decorative element, have a try of this. You might come up with another way. You might have some vintage bias binding. I did even consider doing some lace on it, and I thought it'd have to be pretty dense lace, because once again it's pressure, you know, on the lace. So I'm just going past the join a little, and that allows me then, see, I also found the middle. See the side seam, I haven't even stitched that in there yet. The side seam, found the middle and marked it with a pin going this way, so I know where my tunnel needs to meet. And then with just a bit of eye measuring, you know how it goes. Oh, it's great breaking all the rules, isn't it? It's just great. And even though we've got, you know, technical rules we would have learning to sew, Grandma used to do impromptu stuff as well. She would look at problems and solve problems, and, you know, I think if you're a seamstress, that's what they did. Especially if they had limited fabric, they were often working out how they could piece together something to get the outfit out of it. Or the best problem solving I ever saw with her was when she had a piece of clothing already that she was modernising for a different event. I think that's skill. When you're a dressmaker and someone comes to you with a dress and says, look, I wore this 10 years ago when I was younger, but now I want to wear it again, and it needs to be, this is a bit fiddly, take your time with it. You could probably even trim that back a little bit so there's no bulk there, but I think I can get that to sit all right anyway. Yeah, as I said before, I'm not sure what cordage I will use, but my bag will be done. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Cords go in there. I have a tunnel. Using the sewing machine, find any needles, pins in there, girl, before you go and stitch them in. Alrighty. Okay. There's one. I think they're all accounted for now. Just double check. Why are you two there? No, it's all good. And the lining's sitting nice and flat too, which is good. A little bit puckery there. Let's just take the pressure off that point. Not that you'd notice it because there's going to be cord through there and it'll be gathered. Yeah, nice and big, isn't it? What a great big project bag. Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to slip off to that sewing machine again. Be back in a moment. Guys, I'm back. Okay, so for the purposes of a semi-completed project, because I'd really like to play with making a rope. Fudgy's joined me. He's been bellowing at me. I'm just going to run some of this cordage through just to complete it somewhat. So Fudgy, Mum should be sitting with you, shouldn't she? For goodness sakes, mucking around with this stuff again. So what you do is you go right around the whole piece. So I went in there, went right around, and I come out there. And now I'm going to do it again, but from this side. Oh, that iron's on. Fudgy, you please be careful, my little boy. So I'm going to sit just above that first rope and scooch all the way around again using my bobkin to run it in. I've got to be a little careful, trying not to rush, because I've woven this fabric, so it's not like it's skidding along a nice soft surface, a smooth surface. So I'm coming around to the side again, off one side, and I've got to keep going. Go back in there. Don't you come out yet. It's got to go right back to where you started. So you have the two cords coming out the two ends, and it really helps cinch it in. Such a big, luscious bag. It's so good. You'd fit a lot of gear in this. Quite a large project. Fudgy, don't jump. Just sit down. I'm bumping his tail. Just sit there, buddy. Okay, we're out the other end. All right. So let's remove this. Bit of length. You can always fiddle around with the cordage. If it's too long and becomes annoying, just trim it off. You can put some beads on the end. All right, there we go. So that's it. You've got your little bag coming in. Beautiful. There's the base. Looks like a shower cap, doesn't it? And that is quite a big bag. And then it's just a case of loosen off the ropes and you're in. Now, Fudgy, you're right there. Now I do need to stitch this side seam, so let's pretend that that is completed. I actually just like it with that. It's just simple. Do have some threads I need to trim off, but yeah, I'm going to call this project completed. Thanks, Susanna, for the idea, and like I said, you need to watch the videos to work out how to make it. Have a play with it. You know, if you can come up with a different way of doing things, just do it. Like, it's great fun, just exploring options. Look at that. It's actually quite big. Very cool. All right, guys, I'm going to say goodnight. It's been a long day. This video's dragged on with dinner in amongst it, a bowl of ice cream and a Fudgy cat that's getting a little bit over this whole business and wants me on the couch. So I'm going to say goodnight. Drawstring that closed, and there's my bag. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right, guys. Good night. Bye.